Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're very pleased to welcome a lot of interested parties and maybe starting with myself quickly. I'm Thomas, co-founder and CFO of Yokoi. And basically, what our amazing marketing has done with a lot of participants in a survey is to find out what's currently going on the market when it comes to finance teams and what is of interest. And I'd love to talk about this today. And what I really want to make this session very interactive. So we do have polls after 10, 20, 30 minutes. So we do polls, and please put all your questions into the F&A. F&A section of Slack on the one hand, and then the last 15 minutes we have planned for Q&A. And there, if you want, you can come on stage and ask the question directly, or if you prefer doing the Q&A, please do so. Really want to make this interactive, and if there's something you may agree or disagree, just speak up and let's have a open conversation about it. So. As mentioned, we have basically asked over 200 finance individuals what's important for them when it comes to finance. What is the 2025 most important topics? And we've picked basically the three top ones we want to talk about. First of all, I want to quickly show you who did respond to our questionnaire. So basically, there were a lot of finance managers, VP and C-level people. So all of those colleagues do have a certain say in a finance department. So the relevancy of the survey is definitely given. On the other hand, maybe interesting also what kind of companies we have asked, right? We have basically asked everything from a SME to a big corporate. You see that here on the bottom left of the page. So, and then let's see what the results were. So the top three priorities that were basically flagged were number one, operational efficiency. That's probably not so surprising when you look at the trends at automation, at AI, etc., etc. But we will go a little bit deeper. What were really the driver of it? The number two, talent, probably an issue all across the board for all companies to find the right talent. And then number three, compliance. And compliance can be if you're cross-country, cross-European, or even over the world distributed, can be very, very big topic to be compliant in various restrictions and countries. So what I actually want to start is with the 86% operational efficiency. So what is basically driving it? What is behind that answer? We have also digged a little bit deeper there, and what the main question is basically what is holding finance teams back? 75% of you and the ones who answered that basically complex organizational structures. Obviously, that's a very interesting one and maybe more relevant for established companies versus younger companies. I think as a younger company, I mean, talking about ourselves, you can still steer it. If you're in a more complex organization, probably grown over or organizational structures grown over time, it's pretty tough sometimes to cut things or to not do things anymore that may not be necessary anymore. Then the external regulations even play in here. I mean, we have it at the third point as well for compliance, right? I mean, this is basically big topic all across the board, as it looks like, and I mean, fully understandable. If you look at Europe, every country has a little bit different rules. Has isn't that disadvantaged advantages when it comes to expenses, invoice, it's just finance processes in general. So not a surprising answer as well. And then I find number three very interesting because that's something like the first point as well. Companies could actually tackle and actually change, right? I mean that is something that is more born by the company itself, right? Internal policies and rules. It's not something that is unchangeable. The question there would then be that's probably something for the Q&A section. If what kind of obstacles are around to overcome that, or what kind of hints you can all of you can give to the others in the audience to see how you can basically cut through that and change it. So, yes, so basically, uh, the ways that then there were some more answers, right? And was a little bit different questions, but these are kind of the answers which we got when we ask, what is you limiting when you're doing a daily work, basically. So there's over half, or basically all of those questions, about 50% said that reliance on manual work holds you back for other more important topics. That is kind of easy to understand. It's obviously caused by the three topics just mentioned before. So the more complex of an organization you have, the more manual things you may need to do, the less automation is possible. So over half of the colleagues who have answered the questionnaire have basically issues with the manual work and to not be able to focus on the value adding piece of finance, but really processing. So that is a big thing. Obviously, a lot of potential to reduce that, to take out complexity, and then as a consequence, basically to reduce the manual work. Limitations of existing technology, 52% said that this is an issue. So the question now is it really the technology or is it the complexity of the companies? Probably depends on the single use case. And you cannot say, hey, either that piece or the other piece. What I find interesting also when I look at our clients, sometimes it's refreshing just to think about, we saw before that internal policies, internal rules can really really be a burden. So sometimes it's really good to take a step back and look at the technologies in a way that you may need to change your own internal processes to a certain extent if they're not, depends on the importance obviously of the company, but it can be that you can actually make the technology work much better if you're following the advice or basically the rules of the technology, or the setup of the technology, so that you don't want to kind of change it too much when you buy, for example, SaaS. It's always a big opportunity to look at your processes and maybe kill certain things to make it much easier to handle. That's one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin, obviously, regulatory things. It's not always easy to bring that into software. So there's two sides of the coins. We see that all the time, every day with our customers. But that's certainly interesting answer where maybe part of the solution could be internal and the other part is probably more a regulatory thing, which is a little bit less influenceable. And then complex approval workflows. Very honestly, I've experienced that in the past as well. During my corporate life, um, we had we had certain things that needed to be approved by 10 plus approvers. Then you ask yourself, well, is this really necessary or not? So complex approval workflows, yes, that is limiting your work. But as a finance team, there's maybe an opportunity, depends on how the company is set up, to step up and change things and really take out unnecessary approvers and or set set rules, right? That not everyone has to approve everything. So those kind of things, I see especially the third point, that's really changeable. If the company wants to change, want to simplify, then this point can be really tackled. So it's a little bit surprising to me, honestly, that this third point popped up popped up at this point, and I would be very interested, if that is more an issue for probably rather bigger companies than smaller, more agile ones. So with that, basically, what are the keys? I mean, I tried to tackle it all already a bit. Um, what we see, what from our point of view, is basically simplify the tech stacks, right? I mean, yes, it's important uh, to have software that helps you, but probably sometimes it's helpful if you focus and really decide what what software brings the added value, what less. And then number two, I mean, this is coming basically from the points before, right? Increase your level of automation. You need tools that allow you to automate. If you have a very complex approval workflow, it can only be of help if you can put in the rules and then let the system decide instead of individuals when it's not critical. Obviously, there will be no AI in the world who can or system in the world or AI-based system in the world who can basically decide each and every use case. There's always manual interaction necessary, but is it really necessary on so many levels from so many people? Probably not all the time. And then number three, that goes basically hand in hand, eliminate the manual processes. So when you increase the level of automation, that will basically help your whole organization. And what I heard once from customer, and I find it super, super interesting that, if you do this, if you automate, you get more times and the cases you look at are more important. So those cases, the system tells you, hey, you should look at this use case, that use case. Those you look much closer on, and you really take a decision. If you have like hundreds of things to approve, there's a high likelihood if you're in a stress situation, whatever, you just approve all, and that's just not why an approval should take place, right? So we are a huge advocate of really, really letting the system decide, and when something is really out of order, or basically not working in a way, and rules are not followed, then it needs to go to an approver. It needs to go to the finance team that they interfere. So that's kind of the approach we have here. And yeah, that's kind of this first topic. So with that, hold on. I would open the first poll and basically ask you to vote. So let's take 30 seconds or so, and let's see what the outcome of this one is. Mhm. Can we see the results? Okay, so the majority have chosen for manual tasks. So So it's basically, and it's half the participants. So pretty much what the outcome of the study was as well. Is there anyone who wants to speak up who would give an example how they want to tackle it? And maybe also the second one, very interesting one. I mean, the integration of tools and systems. That's obviously always with software. It's always if there's software not working whatsoever, it's often the integration. And that is a big one. Obviously a a topic that will get increasingly more attention over time as you have more and more software in a company, so you need to let it interact. Good. So yeah, sorry, my marketing just tells me that you cannot speak. So we put that at the end. But if you want to speak up and challenge one of those outcomes, very happy to do so in the Q&A session. After we have covered actually uh, point three. So then let's go. So we have basically looked at the results of, I mean, if you look at the study, right, that was the biggest topic that everyone kind of 86% of the participants brought up. But we have also a basically a second and a third priority. And that is basically, so 42% is actually the regulation adoptions who brought it up. And everyone probably on the call can understand why. If you're in multiple countries, it's quite a huge task to follow each and every individual country, and that's probably specific for Europe with all the regulations, all the rules. But also, if you look overseas, I mean, it's not much better in others. Every country is kind of a little different, and the more entities you're in, the harder it is, basically. So, what makes the adaptation so challenging was kind of the follow-on question in the questionnaire. And astonishing 84% of the companies struggle with implementation of new regulations. So, I mean, probably popular opinion at the moment, but I mean, it's all across Europe, right? There's big discussions. Is it really worth to bring more and more regulations in? I mean, if 84% of those companies we've asked are the opinion that it's basically tough to implement those new regulations. What's the point on? You can be pretty sure that not everyone can, even if they want, can really follow the implementation. So I do think that is a much wider topic that goes beyond software. That is more like the regulators of the world really need to think about what works and what doesn't work. And after a lot of regulations over the past decades, I would say, there's we can see, at least in political landscape, as in my opinion, we can see a little bit a counter trend now. And let's see how far it goes. I do find it super interesting that it's that hard for that many professional teams basically to to get it done. Then, well, I mean, it's very similar to the second one, right? It's just challenging to manage the compliance across multiple entities. We have a good example from one of our early clients early on. We have a train manufacturer in Switzerland, Stadler. They are basically all across the world present, so North America, Asia, and Europe. And what we've seen there, that they were not able before implementing on the one hand, a global ERP and Yoko together to really follow the regulations because it was so fragmented with all the system across from a headquarter point of view, you could not guarantee that all the regulations were basically followed. So we could help there basically to bring them to the next level and help to fulfill. It's still a challenge, and I do think personally this is not only about software, it's also about the regulator itself to think twice when adding new rules. So go to the next one. How you can achieve compliance without complexity. So our advice basically invest in the right technology. And as this is a Yokoi webinar, obviously we do help to streamline, to put everything on the same platform, but to put multiple entities across the world on the same platform and do automate as much as possible when it comes to checks and rule checks, internal rule checks, external compliance checks, etc. So that certainly helps. Think twice, especially if you expand what kind of software you do in which country. It's always helpful if you take a step back and check what I wanna achieve basically down the line. Maybe there's no new countries, etc. planned, so make sure you choose the right software. Um, Another answer is kind of proactive compliance training. I'm there. I find that answer interesting. I do think yes, it's important to do compliance training, but you can kill a lot with software, right? I mean, if the software checks for you compliance, that will help the individual to maybe focus more on the business than just on compliance only. Um, Not always a popular opinion among finance teams. Obviously, we are very much tied to compliance, and we need to be compliant with the rules and regulation. And the third point, also interesting. I mean, get internal and external help, right, with experts. So, but still, I do think with the right technology. So point number one is probably the most important one. With that, you can kill other points mentioned here as well. So this is the second poll basically. How do you anticipate regulatory changes will impact your business operations in the next few years? So do you think it will get worse? It will improve? Very interesting here. And that has even a political aspect, in my opinion. So I'll give you another 30 seconds to vote. So yes, more or less everyone assumes that the operational complexity increases, big majority basically. So basically that's confirmation of what we have done or what the survey said basically. Yeah, not a big surprise. Do I see a question in there? One second. I have one question here. What are the plans of Yokoy on improving workflows based on AI to look for anomalies and other reasons to include a transaction in other workflow? I believe that the current hard set limits, etc., are not the real way to go in order to limit complexity. Well, we do have the workflow designer out since 2 3 months. So basically Q4 we released it. So with the workflow designer, you can basically help to tackle more of those decisions much earlier on. So if you're interested, obviously, please turn to our customer success. I do think that will be a big game changer. and will help to streamline more and more processes. So, I mean, the easy ones like the less approvals, etc., those kind of things we can easily steer via the workflow. And let's take that up at the very end of the Q&A again if I haven't answered the questions appropriately. And there's another question. What are the plans of Yoko on improving workflows? Ah, yeah, sorry, that was that one. Um, yeah, so no more questions than that. So then let's go to the third big outcome of the survey. And the third big outcome is basically talent. And I've talked personally to quite a lot of people about this because what will AI and automation do? So on a very simple level, basically, only if you as an accountant don't have to do the accounting anymore, uh, how do you what are the consequences for young employees? And we saw it internally for firsthand. I mean, we had to explain to an intern what is Yoko actually doing? How is a journal put together? Because it's done automatically, right? If you, I found it a very hard challenge to, especially for young employees, if you don't know the basics, to basically learn those basics. Uh, the systems do that automatically, and then take the next step kind of immediately. So, kind of the talent development will be key, especially as the very basic work you used to start in accounting department and basically do journal entries, that will not be there anymore. So, however, the employees still need to realize what is behind it, right? They still need to understand everything in order to generate additional value. So that's just from my side an input I found very interesting when also talking to clients and see what their stake is. So, and then back to the survey. Um, Basically, here is automation again, not surprising, so somehow connected to the thing I said. Right, on the one hand, we do have still a lot of potential to automate more. And if you automate more, what are basically the consequences for the employee, how they or how the jobs basically change. So there will be a lot of education basically necessary. Um, so what we can do as Yokoi, we have one of our customers is a very global one, hospitality leader. They have 10,000 people all across the globe. So what we can do with automation on a bigger scale is kind of we save them thousands of hours annually by basically putting those workflows, automations, also based on AI in place, that they don't have to control every single expense, every single invoice anymore. And those use cases are super interesting, and obviously would be an answer on those results of the questions. What can we as Yoko do for it? Um, and then basically, how do you create a winning finance function? What are basically the keys from our perspective, from the survey's perspective, respective from the participant who answers? So obviously, if you put automation at the top, then adopt AI. Use AI to the full extent, and very honestly, not all our customers use our AI to the full extent. That's there's certainly potential within our customer base, but I think much more also in general when you look at the tools. It always takes a little bit time until finance teams trust the software and really make use of it. We have there very, very good examples with one very prominent customers, rather young company. It's On, who is globally present. Like they use automations a lot from Yokai. I don't know the current figures, but they were certainly over 90% no touch on in the expense and invoice section. So basically, their teams they look only on the outliers. those who do not work, is it VAT wise or whatever, just internal rules that were breached. So really forward thinking. But to do that and going a little bit back on the on the people side, you need to trust your organization, and that is kind of probably the step also to take. And then the upskill and reskill talent. I mean, I've touched on it already. Super interesting when you talk to clients, when you look what are the challenge with younger employees, but also with older ones, right? I mean, if you automate tasks, there's basically the need or basically the chance also to give much more back to the business, analyze more data instead of doing the manual work, controlling day in day out. So if you can automate that part, it will just give you much more time to add to the business, to help the business. And then number three, and I think this one is also very interesting. Um, Nowadays, I do not think you can convince young employees if you do everything manually. That's just not state of the art anymore. I mean, nowadays, young employees, they've basically grown up on, well, online, more or less, and are used to very straightforward processes, also from private life, basically. So you will have a very hard time. You hear it also on the market. If you look for classical accountants, it's very hard to find. So you need to provide some tools that help to basically get rid of the boring piece sometimes also of the job, and really give them the opportunity to grow and to add more value to the business than just controlling and entering journals, for example. So it's also basically to be a modern employer in the end. So, and then our last poll. What skills do you believe are the most essential for the finance team of the future? So I give you again 30 seconds. We're closing the poll soon. Please answer. Very interesting and very clear answer, actually. So 68% of you saying that data analysis and AI expertise are absolutely essential for the future. And probably if we would have done this poll 10, 20 years ago, there would be still a lot of, accounting skills, but that piece, that journal entries, etc., that we can really to a certain degree automate. I mean, obviously, we still need to understand it, but what is very interesting that with the data we have now available, if you have one tool, for example, where you spend like Yokoi, that gives you the power to have the data in one place. And if you have the data in one place, you need to analyze it. And obviously, if you vote for AI expertise, AI will help to analyze it. I mean, everyone has used ChatGPT at this point probably. So there's a lot of potential in those technology, and not really surprising that this is number one. So with that, and our three outcomes of the survey, and by the way, many thanks for those who participated in the survey. Probably a lot of them also now in the call, interested about the outcome. So very interesting, basically. Or many thanks that you have filled in, and very interesting outcome. And with that, um, oops, sorry, issue on my side. To my last slides, and this is basically in line with what another answers were. So the poll we did on purpose, the poll before this slide. So you see 77% of the finance leaders who filled in the survey would invest more into AI, which is basically confirming the poll from just before. Well, and then, yeah, last summary, basically, we have also asked what are the biggest challenges controlling company spend, and I do think this. I wanna go into the first two. It's all about data, right? If you have the data in one place in one system, it's much easier to control. If you have for each and every country different systems or for even for entities whatsoever, it's much harder to pull all the data together than basically using one system across the company. So not very surprising, but this is a reality. We have seen a lot of customers who basically have, yeah, tools per country or per region, whatever, and then it's probably much harder to have a good look and compare also across the board. Yeah, and then however, I think it's the last question we have, or the last question we want to present here. Um, what is the main focus basically of in 2025? And here a lot of, or basically a third of the participants want to improve the control over company spend. And again, there it's important to have one system all across the board and get the data insights over all your entities in one tool or basically one source. If you want to use an external analytics tool. So, and then probably the last one, this is more advice from us, from our side, obviously a bit biased from Yoko's side, but hey, number one, you have platforms out there who are using AI and are experienced with it. So invest in those, ensure the scalability and compliance. So use a platform that is scalable over multiple countries if you need to do so. If a company is present in various countries, then this configurable workflow thing. Just mentioned that we've released a few months ago. So workflows will help together with AI to take basically complexity out of the business. And number four is basically going back to the slide before, right? If you have everything on one platform, you have also the data. And number five, and that is probably a lot feedback from the client as well. If you have multiple tools in place in various locations, so employees switching, and you may have all the tools as well, so you can never understate user experience. It just helps to basically for adoption. It helps for adoption that employees are happy to use the tools. So never underestimate this. And if you take those advices, in our opinion, you should be well suited to be ready to buy technology. So, last poll here before we go into the Q&A section. So, another 30 seconds before we'll go into a 5-10 minutes Q&A session, depending how many questions we get. With 10 more seconds, everyone can vote. So, and two-thirds are basically putting in staying competitive. Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the end, it's a cost factor, right? The more you can automate, the more added value a finance team can bring to the business, the more the business will, or the company as such, will basically be better off if a finance team can really focus on the business and help the business to get better, to get more efficient, to analyze more what we can go from, we can go across the board basically. The more time you have to support the business, the better the company's off, and the less repetitive and well, repetitive tasks you have to do or you can automate, the less costly it will be. And then, yeah, number B is kind of employee satisfaction that goes into the talent direction. I fully agree with that. I do think it will be increasingly difficult with a very old tech stack to motivate um, young new joiners in a company to maybe move into the company in general or even move into the finance team if you don't have a modern tech stack. So interesting answers, and I think I think with that, I want to thank you and open basically the Q&A section. So I'll switch to the chat. So there's multiple options. Either you can speak up and ask the question directly, or you can write your questions into the chat. Um, There's one question. Is there a list of accounting ERPs that Yoko can be connected to? Yes, there is on the homepage and via our sales team. And there's one joker we always have. We have open APIs. So if your ERP may not be on the list, that's not necessarily that doesn't need to be necessarily the end of the discussion. As we offer open APIs, you can ask one of our partners or your own IT team or a partner of your choice to connect with our open APIs. That just makes sure that in theory we can connect to any system. Obviously, we have for the bigger players in the market, we do have standard connectors and that are yeah, rather fastly set up. Then we have a question from about the workflow designer. Is AI supported? Well, it depends a little bit how you define it. Yes, obviously the workflow designer as such, that is basically a rule-driven engine. But you can put on top the recognition, outlier recognition, etc. And if you combine the two, that is the most powerful approach. Then next question. What are some common misconceptions about AI in finance, and how can finance leaders address these concerns? Well, a little bit speaking of the past, as we started in 2020, um, yes, we're using AI since the start. Then we really had to explain to customers what can an AI do? How can we basically automate it? And what is the added value when an AI analysis does the analysis about VAT, for example, if that makes sense on the receipt, right? If what does it change? And a lot of companies in the earlier days used Yokoi as kind of a tool to showcase employees, especially on the expense side, as every employee somehow is connected to expenses, right? What AI can help with. So you don't have to type in anymore. You don't have to do checks on the finance side. The VAT is recalculated automatically and then flagged, and it's realizing what kind of country you're in, so what VAT rates apply, and so on and so forth. So it was kind of in the beginning, and it still is to a certain extent, depend a little bit the company. It's a low entry barrier to bring AI for the first time in your company and show how it can help. With that, I want to thank you a lot again, also for those who were part of the survey. Very interesting outcome. And yeah, if there are questions, we're always happy to help and open to collaborate. Thanks a lot for the attention, and I wish you a very nice day.